Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.
Here in episode 121, we have Mike McHorse, NACFE's Director of Industry Engagement, where he explains why he has diesel in his blood and his family's long history in trucking. He also talks about his involvement with the launch of the Freightliner Cascadia, Team Run Smart, and some of the initial work with autonomous technology. He explains what makes a good value story, what brought him to NACFE, and his love of emerging technologies. Hello, and welcome to this episode of my podcast series. I'm real excited to do these, and I enjoy them quite a lot. And oftentimes I'm meeting with friends that either I work with a lot or haven't talked to in a good while. Today is Mike McHorse, and Mike's the Director of Industry Engagement here at NACFE. So he's one of those that I work with quite often. As a matter of fact, we were together in Arizona just a couple of weeks ago. And he's a member of our team here at NACFE, but hasn't always been, and actually is a pretty recent, joined us. But thanks for joining me today, Mike. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, and thanks for having me, Mike. I'm looking forward to the chat.
So you had a significant career, much like the rest of us here at NACFE, and been in the trucking industry quite a while. And I'm particularly interested to hear some of your thoughts and even advice as to how we go through these times. I mean, one of the things I think about, Mike, is, we often think, man, things are tough right now. And, you look back and we've been through tough times before. So maybe I'll pick your brain on some of those times. But this podcast is for Mike Roth and Friends, and we've been friends a while. Do you remember how we first met?
Mike, I don't know the exact date, but I remember you giving me a call and saying you guys were going to be holding a meeting in the Charlotte area, and asked if I could help coordinate a meeting space, which we were able to accommodate at Hendrick Motorsport, if I recall right.
Oh man, one of my favorite. I mean, I have a self-proclaimed reputation. I guess that means I want this, and that is to hold meetings in cool places. I mean, it's easy to say, all right, well, let's just do it at a conference center or at a hotel. We had a great time. We had probably 80 people at at the time we were calling those trucking efficiency workshops, and they were eclectic group of people. But yeah, my wife came along that day. We got there and she started setting up and, getting things organized. And she said, "Where is everybody?" And I said, "Well, half of the attendees are in the garages of the Hendricks Motorsports teams, and the other half is in the museum looking at Corvettes." And she looked at me and she says, "Do you actually expect them to come to your meeting and not just stay there?"
Yeah, it's a pretty special venue, and one of the largest collections of muscle cars, probably in the world, rotating collection. So anytime you go in there, it's going to have different cars than the next time you go back.
So you and I go way back. I mean, you ended up becoming a NACFE board member for a couple of years, and then you retired or left Daimler and went to Premier, which is a Penske dealership group, and now you're here with NACFE. So, but tell us about your background and your career. It's an interesting one, and just what makes you tick, and I don't know, maybe end with why you kind of keep staying in trucking for all these years.
You might say I've got diesel in my blood. My great grandfather was actually a technician for Consolidated Freightways when the company started back in the 1920s, and I've got some pictures of him working on Model T trucks that they used to move freight back in the day. And then my grandfather was involved in a Mack dealership in Portland, Oregon. My dad went on to be the director of maintenance for Consolidated Freightways, and then also was involved in a heavy Ford truck dealership in Southern California. And then coincidentally, my brother was a director of engineering at Daimler, and worked on a lot of projects, and including all the aerodynamic devices that were on the FLD at the time. So I always said I was not going to get involved in the trucking industry, and I started my career doing some other things, and lo and behold, around 1987, I think it was, I landed a job at Daimler Freightliner Trucks at the time, and in the warranty department. And I remember I was processing warranty claims, and then I got a promotion. I got a promotion shortly thereafter to a department called vendor recovery.
Oh, I
So,
had both of those. I had both of those groups at International for a while. That's not.
yeah, yeah.
That's
I remember I hasn't been the head. I wasn't the most popular guy with vendors, obviously trying to get them to take responsibility for components that were faulty. And I don't know if you remember at the time there was a big steering gear recall, and I'll bet for 3 months I never lifted as many steering gears up on the benches and doing testing on them. So
definitely not the most glamorous work.
yeah, but yeah, I went on to, would stay with Daimler for a lot of years and, different roles. I was involved in the aftermarket side of the business, with a program called Fleet Pack, and then moved into, used trucks when Daimler actually set up their used truck network called Select Trucks, and I was the,
Mhm.
oversaw the marketing department there and, got that up and running and so forth. And anyway, and then I ended up on the new truck side for a number of years. That's when we met. I was the marketing guy over the Cascadia platform, and I launched both the kind of the Cascadia Evolution platform, and then the P4 next generation Cascadia, uh, and uh, and then ultimately, before I left the company, I was the director of marketing there over the Freightliner and Detroit brands, and before I moved on to go to work for Roger Penske on the Premier Truck Group side.
Wow, yeah, and uh, we're kind of kindred spirits. I mean, I'm an engineer by training. A lot of my jobs have been in engineering, but I've always enjoyed the storytelling, marketing, PR side of things, and it's been a big affinity of yours over the years. And helping tell the value story to customers or to different groups. Do I have that right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it really kind of came to fruition during the Cascadia launches because there was always like what are we doing on the product, and you've always got to you got to find that component or system and turn that into a benefit for the customer, and be able to showcase that and demonstrate it. And so it was always fun. It was so hands on, getting to ride and drive events and bring dealers in for training or customers in for, product demonstrations. And it was especially fun as we started to move into, collision mitigation systems and autonomous technologies. And you can imagine if you've never been in a truck, weighted down to 80,000 pounds, screaming up to the back of a inflatable car and being able to stop before you hit that thing. Uh, and it's so eye opening. And that technology, customers, initially said, "Oh, we don't want these on our trucks." And when they actually saw it in action and said that could have been an actual passenger car, stopped on a road, and our truck would have stopped and saved multiple lives potentially. So,
We were talking the other day, and we both realized we lived in Fort Wayne at the same time. What brought you here?
well, sure, I took a short stint off from Daimler, about 4 years. Actually, it was 3 years. And I was a partner in a marketing agency in Fort Wayne. And but of course, my role was to work on the commercial vehicle side, and basically was had a badge still to go into Daimler and do projects for them and so forth. So yeah, it was an interesting time, and I've lived all over the country, and that was a fun place to be for those 3 years.
Well, it sounds like almost you're a little modest on your marketing and PR history and so forth. Especially given that you left Freightliner to do that. Let's explore that a little farther. I mean, what makes a good value story to customers? And you can use trucks, of course, but just like what's the magic there?
Yeah, one thing about the trucking industry is that you get an opportunity to work with some amazing people, even especially fleet customers and customers that would buy products from us. But you can't buffalo these people. They understand their business and they know their operations, and you've got to be able to demonstrate to them the value in the product. And so, of course, the industry uses a terminology now very commonly called total cost of ownership, and prior to that, we kind of spun that a little bit and called it real cost of ownership. And everything that we did around the Cascadia product line at the time that I was involved in was really to say, what is the product or system on the truck, and how does that bring to a customer the ability to manage or lower their operating costs and or give them value down the road at the time of resale and things like that. So that really, Mike, is from my perspective is in our industry was the thing that was the most important element from a marketing perspective of being able to communicate that in a way that they understood it and it could be replicated on their end through their operations to be able to feel comfortable purchasing vehicles through us at the time.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons I've loved this industry is it buys with numbers. It buys with, costs and performance numbers. And I guess that's a little easier to turn the engineer's pride in something they created and turn it into value to the customer. It's not like we're selling, plaid versus polka dot blankets and trying to convince a buyer of the blankets which one's best. We're working with something that can be justified in the world of the buyer. I mean, what makes sense to them and whether they, have long distance freight or short distance freight or, but I think it works best when we can do that. But it is kind of challenging talking to the traditional engineers because they're so damn proud of what they put forward. And they will say it'll do this and that, and it'll live at this temperature for this many cycles. And, that's hard to sell a customer. You got to get in and really get into the weeds of their business. So I guess walk in the shoes of the customer to do that, I suppose.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I can't, tell you how many times, working with the engineering departments, and I have very close relationship with all the Daimler engineers I worked with. In fact, my brother was an engineer, as I mentioned, and they speak a different, speak sometimes when it comes to how we want to communicate that to the market. So it was always a very collaborative effort to do that, and a lot of times, we were when we did product demonstrations, we always had the engineering there, to see what we were doing and make sure that they were comfortable with how we were presenting the products that they engineer.
Quality function deployments, fancy terms for go out and talk to your customer and find out what they need. Find out where maybe the current product isn't meeting those needs, and then, deploy that down into engineering in some sort of, customer needs and wants and expectations, whether you're designing a cross member on a frame rail or an instrument panel or a steering wheel or seat. And then the engineers go do their work and they validate it and so forth. And then, in the true sense of the tool quality function deployment, you're supposed to kind of turn that back around and take what the attributes and the key performance numbers from that component, but then turn that around in a sales process that that the customers can then understand. So the customer's giving you what they want, and then you go engineer it and then you go out and sell it. I think that latter part is often missed, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. So it's nice when it works really well. I'm going to segue a little to now that you're at NACFE. I mean, what brought you to NACFE?
Yeah, Mike, obviously, I had a chance to spend quite a bit of time with the organization when I was a board member during my time at Daimler, and I really got to see from that experience how important NACFE is to the industry. I've always felt that having unbiased reporting and information was important in the industry, and the fact that we could then see how closely our results replicated what you folks were finding out in the field. So that was always important to me. And when you approached me as I was retiring back in April of 2025, and had the opportunity to come on and work with you folks to do what you were doing was really exciting to me. So I love emerging technologies. I'm not an engineer, but I pretend to be sometimes, and
Yeah.
it's just fun to immerse yourself in the information and the technologies and get a chance to see them in the real world, how they're performing and where they might go in the future.
It's great having you and getting involved with Run on Less right away that, has happened here with these different technologies has been really helpful. So, thanks for being here. I wanted to ask you about Team Run Smart. It was a Freightliner idea, very unique. So tell us about it. What sparked it? Still a thing, maybe 10 years later? Tell us about the nuts and bolts of Team Run Smart.
I came on into a position at Daimler again, overseeing the Cascadia product line, and noticed that a lot of our efforts were being focused on the big customers, but and rightly so. I mean, that's the bread and butter where you get your sales. But on the flip side of that, I saw that there's a lot of owner operators at the time were still kind of enamored with driving the big flat nose products in the marketplace. And I knew at the time they were probably not getting, much better than 5 miles per gallon. And then having, ridden the wave of the glut of used trucks in the market, and having the ability, the need to sell those to buyers that ended up, maybe not being able to afford those, and the repossessions that came back. I saw that the crux of that was really that they didn't know how to run a business. So what we did is then we looked and said, hey, if we could find a handful of very successful owner operators that we could put in Freightliner product, and then have them share their stories, not only about the operation of the vehicle and how it's working for them, but also about how they run their business and what things they do to be successful. And that's where we stumbled across some great individuals that we put on the team. One of which is Henry Albert, who's still a part of Team Run Smart. A gentleman named Jimmy Navarez.
You had Clark Reed in that group.
Yeah, Clark Reed, thank you. Yeah. So, and so you take these individuals and say, hey, these guys can really communicate well, but they got a great story to tell. And then we would, send them off to do blogs, and then we also use them heavily at trade shows as well. And they used to, have a big following. People would come up from I remember at Mid America Trade Show, that people would come up and just in throngs to talk to them about what they're doing, and try to help them.
Part of why I think that worked back then was you did that about the time diesel fuel prices were going up. And, the difference between a 5 mile per gallon truck and an 8 mile per gallon truck, even back then, is tens of thousands of dollars a year in fuel. So, and if I take myself back to that time, and many people listen to this will remember, the long and tall external air cleaners and stainless, and, sticking your chest out when you pulled into the truck stop late at night with all that chrome and stuff. That was trucking, and a lot of people were very against the Kenworth T2000 was called the Anteater and joked about, or all these, sometimes it was those fleet aerodynamic trucks. How silly do they look? And, that's not trucking, and on and on. And so there was a reluctance. At the same time, those new trucks were delivering, excellent efficiency and saving tons of money. But, I get that that was probably part of what motivated you to do that. And I wonder if now we're kind of in the same situation. We heard a lot when we were going to automated transmissions that's not a trucker's transmission. I'm a trucker. I shift gears. I don't want that. And now we've got similar thing with battery electric trucks, right? Well, there's no noise. I can't hear the engine. That's not trucking, or this and that and the other. And so I wonder if maybe there's a Team Run Smart on electric trucks, or some sort of driver education. Let's talk about that in our normal work, Mike.
And one of the things that people forget is how fatiguing it is to be a truck driver. It's a lot. It's a lot of work. You spend all day behind the wheel fighting traffic and all of those things, and then you're expected to sleep overnight in the back of a truck and get a good night's sleep and do it all again tomorrow. And one of the things is the systems and amenities available in the new trucks allow the driver to be able to relax, quite a bit more with some of the advanced safety systems and cruise control systems and things like that. And then just the quality of the ride quality and those type of things. So the advancement in trucks has made that part of the life more enjoyable, including, as you mentioned, the automated manual transmissions.
Even the time while they're in the sleeper, one of the run on less drivers told us this summer that if she's detained at a dock where they can't unload her for a couple hours, she goes back into the back, runs the air conditioner, and she's a gamer. So she sits back there and, plays her games. The connectedness that we have today. I mean, instead of going into the truck stop and calling your family on the payphone, you're FaceTime into the soccer game or the concert right from the sleeper. So we have come a long ways. But, all these things require change, and our human nature is we're reluctant to it. So I think like things like Team Run Smart, where you're seeing the change, you're sharing the change, in the social media world we're in now, that's got to help with adoption and with acceptance of these things quicker.
Yeah, and Mike, I'll say, I think some of these emerging technologies, I'll say, battery electric is one of those things that's going to make it that much easier for drivers to operate vehicles. They're just, I'm a Tesla owner, and I never thought I would be. And I'm going to tell you what, the ease of driving those vehicles and the systems that allow it to drive itself and things like that are just they're game changers. And then and so we'll see where they ultimately end up going. But I think if you think about fleets, and right now there's maybe not in the situation where they're struggling to find drivers, but if they were, and they've got to offer drivers the latest and greatest technology, and something that a driver can be anxious to get into, some of those technologies might be the ticket for that.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, if you experience it driving your personal car, then professional drivers, whether they're, ride sharing Uber drivers or package delivery or 18-wheeler drivers, they're going to appreciate it even more because they're in it so much often. They have to deal with all the challenges of weather and other drivers and traffic and so forth. So I think you're exactly right. I really think it's going to be an interesting time as we move forward. And, both of us have been through lots of boom and bust economic times. So we will be short of drivers again very soon because freight will go up. More trucks will need to be on the road hauling that freight, and more drivers will need to be in them driving the trucks. What is the essence of these times? I mean, we call it the messy middle and so forth. And I've been a little reluctant. I mean, the industry's been through a lot with emissions regulations and, deregulations and final mile delivery. And over the last 50 years, the industry's dealt with a lot. So how would you describe this round of stuff right now? Is this, challenging, or are we making too much of it? And then, secondly, what's your advice for all of us trying to wade through it all?
Yeah, I think that's two things. I think, like we mentioned, this industry is cyclical, and the strong survive. It's always been that way. So sure, it's challenging, but what typically happens is people learn how to run their operations better, and they come out on the backside stronger than they were before. But also say it's clarity, or in this case right now, it's kind of lack of clarity about where the technologies are going in the industry. Some of that involves regulations, some of it involves cost and availability and things like that. I think all of those things will become more clear. They always do. When that'll happen, I couldn't tell you. I don't have a crystal ball, but I will say some of that cream is going to rise to the top, and people are going to start taking advantage of that. So.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Well, hey, thank you for your time and sharing. I always get a kick out of dealing with some, important challenges on these recordings. So thanks very much for joining me, Mike.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike.
Freight Efficiency with NACFE's Mike Roth and Friends.